Well, hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Concert Conversations with your Quad City Symphony Orchestra. I am so excited to tell you today that we are joined not only by our music director and conductor, Maestro Mark Russell Smith, but also the concertmaster for the Quad City Symphony Orchestra, Naha Greenholtz, is joining us as we talk about this upcoming March concert of the QCSO. Friends, welcome and thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Naha, it's always so nice when you can join us for a concert conversation because I very much appreciate your perspective on things. And for this concert, we get to hear you in some lovely music by Mozart, which is why, as you can see, the symphony has flown me on a special first-class ticket, of course, to Salzburg, where I'll be conducting the concert. Don't worry, I'll be back in time for the concert, so we'll be back for that. But let's first talk about this program as a whole. And Maestro, we're getting a chance to hear something new for the Quad City Symphony Orchestra, the opening work by an exciting composer named Chen Yi.
Yes, she is a great. I love Chen Yi's music because it's, well, a couple things. I mean, it's very expressive. It's effervescent. It's like full of life. And she, I think, more than, well, I mean, there are other composers who do a good job with this, but she really straddles both worlds. She knows what to ask Western instrumentalists to do to evoke sounds that come from Chinese music, come from that tradition. And so in a very organic way. I mean, she's not asking impossible things, but she's asking things that kind of bridge the gap between both sound worlds, and that's really hard to do. And I think that's why. I mean, that's one of the reasons why her music is very popular. And she's also she's kind of a force of nature. I mean, she's just a really exuberant, lively, animated person. She's been in the States for quite a while, actually. And so I've done a couple pieces of hers and got to work with her. And I just really like her very much. And I like her music very much.
Well, what can you tell us to sort of set the table for the work that we'll be hearing, the Duo Ye?
Well, I'm not positive of the origin of it. I think it started smaller and she's expanded it. I don't know all the ins and outs of it right now. I chose it because it's a great opener, and I think it's a great. We have like two, bread and butter, German/Austrian pieces, and so to have something. First of all, over the course of the big season that we don't have any Chinese music, but also something that works well with that same numbers of instruments, the same, it's the same size as the other two pieces, but creates such a different sound world. And I think that's a very interesting contrast with the rest of the program as well. I think it was left over from the COVID year also. I think if I remember correctly, we programmed it in something else, and then, yeah. Anyway, so it's all kind of a mess, a mush in my mind as how things flow together. Or not.
Well, that's okay, but just for the historical record for folks watching, it was one of the imperatives of shifting in the pandemic is that programs simply couldn't be as long as they might once have been because you needed time for air circulation and those sorts of things. So
and orchestras need to be smaller. We couldn't have as many people on stage.
Right. So those factors conspired against us, but I'm grateful that you're bringing it back, and that'll be wonderful. And it's a great table setter for a chance to once again hear our concertmaster as a featured soloist. And Naha Greenholtz, thank you again for joining us. But you're going to be joining us this time for the Violin Concerto No. 4, Kirche Listing 218. And I one of the things I like to ask you...
Mozart, you forgot that part.
Mozart, sorry. Well,
right.
Thank you, Maestro. See, I'm just lost without you guys. But you've had so many interesting stories about some of the great works that you've brought to us as a soloist. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your journey with this piece and how it began and where you find yourself now.
this is a new piece for me. I've played the other two Mozart concertos. Well, there are five, but the last three, 4, and 5 are the most, solidly in the repertory. And so 3 and 5 I performed for is, it's a fresh look. They were all composed like around the same time, thought to be like around 1775. And it's, quintessentially Mozart. They are all quite similar in spirit. And this one, doesn't stray from that fantastic formula of just playful, lighthearted. It's got just a really soaring operatic second movement that's so beautiful. And yeah, it shows off the soloist. I think it's a trademark of his concertos, because we think, well, we're not quite sure who he wrote them for, but we think he might have written them for himself. And Mozart, he's a true triple threat, if you will, or maybe even quadruple threat if you include his viola playing. We know his piano playing, his compositions, of course, and then he was also just a first-class violinist.
One of the things I find so intriguing about talking to really great musicians is you'll say things like, well, this part is soaring and operatic. And as listeners, we think, oh, it sounds so beautiful. But those are often the hardest parts of the piece that seem so effortless to us, the audience. But I think that's true, that Mozart, considering his father thrust him on stage at about the age of 5 with a tiny violin, there's got to be the bit of the show off, right, in everything. And I think that makes it even more compelling. But I did want to ask you, it's intriguing that you mentioned that, and I wanted to ask you both this question. You can't ask a parent what their favorite child is, but when you take Mozart as a whole, what do you think he was most passionate about? Violin, keyboard, or opera, or something else? But because he invests so much into the piano works, into the violin works, and into the opera. Have you guys ever given that any thought?
He is such a natural dramatic composer, and opera is his bread and butter. And the way, especially the De Ponte operas, the way things unfold, and the unbelievable sense of drama and sense of flow and sense of trajectory. I mean, he was, they're just masterpiece after masterpiece. However, he puts that same drama into the symphonies and to his string quartets and quintets. And even as early as these violin concertos are, I mean, there's absolutely, there are these elements, there's these dramatic elements, there's the operatic elements, like Naha said, with the second movements. There's what I find amazing about the violin concertos, especially, is such small forces. I mean, it's strings and 2 oboes and 2 horns. And just the freshness and the spontaneity and the ideas just like bubbling forth, and especially like in the last movements where like things take unexpected turns and stop, and then you have a different tempo, and all sorts of unique things in the structure. I mean, these works I think are just has so much vitality and so much youth. Yes, in a show-offy way. I mean, there's a letter he wrote to his dad saying, I think he played one of these concertos, like, like when I practice, like, I'm one of the best violinists in Europe. And like his dad, who wasn't exactly, comfortable throwing compliments around, was like, when you do practice or when you actually play, like, you are the best violinist in Europe, and I don't doubt that, anyway.
And at the time, his dad wrote the book,
Right, literally, right, yeah, exactly, right.
On violin playing specifically.
Right. Good. So yeah, and his dad, as you know, pushed him out on stage, but was also like very disapproving of all sorts of things, including how lazy he was, But I have no doubt that when he put his mind to it, he could, play those concertos like spectacularly well, with great conviction.
Well,
but anyway, but I mean, I think it's all related, and like to say, do you like the symphonies better than the piano concertos? If you just take that, as far as personal statements, you know, as far as the middle movements of piano concertos. I mean, that's a whole, you know, you could take that on a desert island and that'd be plenty, you know. So, but it's all related, I think, just as to who he is.
Well, I do want to bring up something, and Naha, this is why I really hope the people who are watching this will be there in person, because one of the things I'm always captivated by, when you are performing as a soloist with the Quad City Symphony Orchestra, I've had a chance to see this symphony really blow the minds of soloists from all over the world. And it is cool when we have, you know, guests coming from literally all over the world. But I always get the sense when you're playing with the symphony as a soloist, there's I don't want to call it a comfort level, but there's this collegiality in this partnership because of your mutual acquaintance with one another that creates not only a wonderful sound experience, but it's visually so nice to see that there's so much evident respect and affection for one another. And I mean, do you feel that? Because I know you have a touring schedule that takes you all over the place and performing with everybody, but how is that as opposed to, you know, getting up on stage with the home team?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say there's a warmth and a familiarity, as you say. And it is beautiful to you know, share music with my colleagues that I admire so much. And it's also nice to, you know, stand in a hall that I'm very familiar with. I know what it's going to sound like around me when I stand in this spot, you know, 4 or 5 feet from Mark. And you know, working with Mark now, we've done a number of big works over the years, and so there's definitely it is like coming home, like you said.
Well, and we've talked a little bit about the Chen Yi and the Mozart, and stick around, Naha, but I also do want to make sure we don't give short shrift to the Robert Schumann Symphony No. 2, Opus 61.
Can I take one step back though, too?
Oh, no, please do, please do.
I mean, I think this orchestra accompanies really well. I mean, just in general, I think there's a culture here that, I think especially with colleagues like Naha, but for anybody, for singers, for, you know, I think we've developed the ability to really accompany well and really listen well. And that's a great thing. And not every orchestra can do that. You know, I mean, I remember a Strauss 4 Last Song. It was just like unbelievable how softly people could play, but still with beauty of sound. You know, I mean, I think as a soloist, certainly as a conductor, to have players who are willing and who are like actively involved in accompanying, in participating, but also keeping the volume down when you need to, you know, inserting themselves when it's appropriate, and then backing, you know, all those just musical awareness and being great accompanists. I mean, as I said, not every orchestra does that. And so soloists comment on that a lot. And I think, you know, it's probably, I mean, Naha plays with other orchestras too. And we're not comparing here, but I'm just saying, I think that's part of our culture too, is being good accompanists. And that adds to, I think, that feeling of support and of being, supported. Well,
and now stick around, Naha. We're not letting you off the hook because I got some other questions for you. But I did want to talk about the Schumann and also Maestro about the selection of that work, the Symphony No. 2, to be part of this program, where for many of us, I mean, I'll just be honest, I'm coming to hear Naha Greenholtz. So how are you going to keep my attention in the Schumann?
Wow. Schumann 2 is, I mean, I love Schumann. Schumann is so honest and so unpretentious, and so he just puts it out there, you know. And for me, that's just very attractive, and it's very warm, and it's this piece in particular I've just loved for a long time. I got to conduct it early on in my career with the Phoenix Symphony as an assistant. Like I took it over for somebody at the last minute, and then just, so I mean, there's like history with me with this piece particularly, but also, I mean, this is what this orchestra plays really well. romantic German music later. I mean, we've had Bruckner on the season, but that sound world and the lyricism and the color and the kind of sustaining, I mean, this symphony has it all. It has a famous scherzo that's on every violin audition in the world. That's just like this incredible dance. I mean, this incredible, just vivacious piece that ends with an incredible flourish. It has, I mean, Schumann is a song composer. If you don't know Schumann's songs, then you don't know Schumann. And so the third movement is one of the most beautiful lyrical song movements that has ever been written for orchestra. Long violin lines, for the violin section, oboe solo. I mean, it's just so lyrical and so attractive. And then we have these kind of big boned, unapologetic outer movements. I mean, some people say Schumann's a little rough in orchestration, but this symphony I think is just attractive from start to finish. And he's trying to be Brahms a little bit, motivic and all very structural, but he was much more of a free spirit actually, and that kind of the joie de vivre, and also just that kind of unbuttonness and just openness and honesty. I think it really you can hear it, and it makes it just a really attractive piece, I think.
Now I'm gonna put you both on the spot here a little bit. And in terms of works that the two of you have not yet collaborated on, I'm not asking you for a definitive bucket list, but if there were a work where it doesn't matter who's ready for it, who's done it in the past, anything like that, do you ever think about there's a work that you'd like to collaborate on in the future? And let's see, who looks less out of left field, because my questions usually come from there. I'll pick on you first, Naha. Is there a work, and maybe it's just a work that you're interested in doing anyway?
I think we could do more Strauss with this. Maybe something, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've ever done Alpine Symphony. I think we did Don Juan a couple seasons ago, and it was fantastic. I remember having just like a rip-roaring good time with it. I think
Strauss. I mean, I thought I was going to say Helmleben, Strauss Helmleben, because I mean it's the ultimate concertmaster, showpiece, but it's a showpiece for the whole orchestra too.
Right.
I mean, that's the one that
overall,
when you ask that question, right?
So we have overall, I think Alpine Symphony takes it for me.
So we had a little Strauss back in December. So maybe what we're looking at is a future season. We could just do Strauss the whole doggone season.
No, we could just program a whole season right now.
But you said something that I think would be intriguing for our audiences. Both of you did. First, Naha, you said a particular work was a rip-roaring good time, and you're probably saying that in part as a violinist, in part as a concertmaster. But from your perspective, what makes a work on a program or a program the kind of thing that I'm going to have a rip-roaring good time? What are some of the elements of that for you?
Like Mark said, it really depends on the repertoire. Some things are so delicate, like French music is, you can really put your soul into it, but it does tend to be more careful at times in like the colors that you need to get. But with German music, you can really dig in. And I agree with Mark that with the Schumann, it is like unexpectedly fun the first violin part is really hard on the second symphony in particular. But it's hard to explain, but you kind of get this feeling like as you're playing that you're really exploring all the material from different angles. And then you really do, get to dig in. So yes, Brahms, and then, German, classical German music, also early 20th century Russian music, like Prokofiev and Shostakovich. These are things that really make us sing.
And Maestro,
right, and I mean, there are various pieces in the rep that are more familiar than others. And I think one thing that is fun about Don Juan is that, I mean, it's on a lot of auditions for string players especially. And so all the super hard stuff, like people kind of know. And so there's a certain kind of swag you can demonstrate, you know, since it's not the first time you're doing it and it's super familiar, I mean, that helps tremendously, I think, you know.
That's
so
right.
The pieces were like, the pieces that we played more, of course, it's easier to have a great time with, you know. So it's a double-edged sword, you know.
But this is maybe even a more facile question. Maestro, you said that Heldenleben is a great time for a concertmaster. And just for someone, you know, sort of a little more parochial like me, what is it that makes a piece fun for a concertmaster?
There's a huge, I mean, there's huge concertmaster solos. Like, there are many paragraphs of, it's like, you know, like Scheherazade. They're big episodes of concertmaster solos that, you know, long cadenzas, things that interact with the orchestra. I mean, it's one of those concertmaster pieces, you know. It's super hard for everybody. Wow. I mean, it's a tough piece. And I don't know if that's fun for a concertmaster. I mean, Heldenleben, I think, is like, you know, I mean, it's you enter it with fear and trepidation. I think, you know, it's one of those. But so I don't know if you can sit back and have a good time. Like, I don't know.
Right. It's one of those, you know, it's you have it highlighted on your schedule as it's coming up. But yeah, it's for Heldenleben. I mean, yeah, now I wish we were playing it, but the violin has so many episodes and cadenzas because Strauss writes it as a character in the piece, and so it's represents Strauss's wife and all her many moods and temperaments, and so yeah, it's got a lot of crazy stuff in it.
I mean, a piece I want to do is Metamorphosen, actually, which has great solos for all the principals, and it's just like, I mean, such a powerful work, you know. That's on my list. And Kai, I mean, like, you ask about Schumann too. I mean, there are symphonies that I mean, there's so many great romantic symphonies, kind of second half symphonies, and they're just like we have an embarrassment of riches. And so Schumann 2 has been on my list for a long time because we haven't played it in a long time, and it's kind of underappreciated in a way, but like people love it, but it doesn't like pop to mind as the first thing you want to do is Schumann 2, you know. But then you're in the middle of it, it's like, dang, this is great, you know, this is so fun to play, you know. So I try to keep my list of pieces like that, and as future seasons go, and look, there, you know, Prokofiev symphonies, and there's there are things on the list that the audience wants to hear and the orchestra wants to play, and they're like too many of them. Since we only have 6 concerts, there are way too many, and so to keep that list is a really important thing, I think, as the artistic leader, to keep those pieces circulating, you know. That the Schumann, like I said, Schumann 2 wouldn't be something that would pop to somebody's mind, but when they hear it, it's like, that's fantastic, you know. So
well, now, Naha, this is our first chance for the two of us to visit, and I haven't seen you since I think we chatted back in the pandemic season briefly. But now, if the last question was left field, I was mixing my metaphors. This question will come from the Kapuzinerberg, I think, up there in Salzburg. But we haven't had a chance to talk since coming back together in physical proximity. And something I'm intrigued by when I talk to colleagues is that people coming out of the pandemic have a greater appreciation for some things, and there is a willingness to discard other things. So if there were a category of things that you learned as a musician as well as a professional during the pandemic of having to give up and refocus and that sort of thing, would there be something along the lines of something you appreciate more now as a professional musician? Are there things that you are more willing to step away from as a professional?
Absolutely. Like it kept hitting me, you know, when I would come to Quad Cities, and even though the audience was scarce and, you know, by necessity, and we couldn't see each other's faces, but just how much it means to do the concert, to like get out of the house and to do the whole ritual of, you know, walking out on the stage and hearing the A, and it really is like a spiritual thing, and means so much to have the hall be breathing with people. And so I really felt that in my weeks of depression, when everything first was shut down, and then it just, every time I came to Quad Season, was able to see people and play a concert, I felt that again and again. The just importance of live music and having these experiences to share the love of our music together.
I think that's very well put. I've tried to give words to is just when you come back to something that you're familiar with and you see other people, even if it's not as many other people, there's an odd kind of exhilaration. And you talked about the breathing nature, and I think the word exhilaration, the root, has something to do with breathing. So there's something about that. Maestro, what lessons are you carrying into this season?
Well, I mean, Naha said it better than I can. I mean, it's like, it's funny when she said, like, when you hear the A, and it's true, because we've heard so many A's in our life, and what that kind of represents is that, okay, here we go on this journey together. And there's something, I mean, we were talking about musical psychology, like with I forget which composer, but I mean, there's something for an active performing musician, like when you hear that A, and like, it's not butterflies, but it's just like, it's the adrenaline or whatever. It's like, we're taking a journey together now, and to be able to do that, and to be able to take our audience on the journey too. Like Naha said, even with like masks, and even like, the trumpet's like 50 miles away from the podium, and like, all the kind of craziness, it was still Beethoven, and it was still Jesse Montgomery, and it was still Michael Abels, and it was still, these great composers that we were able to dwell in this world. And that was like balm for us, I think, and for the audience too, of course, but it just underscored, how lucky we are to do this for a living, and how fragile these things are. I mean, there are tons of orchestras that didn't play at all, and so I'm just really glad that we're in an orchestra with an organization that was able to do that.
Well, on behalf of everyone who's watching this and everyone who will see the concert, I want to thank you both for being exceptional tour guides. As you say, you've taken us on some great journeys together, and we're very grateful for that. And I should, as on the subject of gratitude, give thanks to Chris Connolly and Wells Fargo Advisors for making these concert conversations possible. But for now, any last words before we break, regroup, and see each other at the Adler and Centennial Hall?
I think this is a concert that's just full of joyful music. I mean, it's full of lyrical music and very thoughtful music, but it's joyful. Chen Yi and Mozart, and then Schumann. I mean, I mean, that was intentional. I mean, it's these kind of, all these pieces work together really well in that way. And so if joy is your thing, then this is your concert. So and hopefully joy is everybody's thing.
Naha?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I'm looking forward to seeing everyone at the hall.
Well, thank you both very much. And friends, we will see you at the Symphony.
Thanks, Kai.
Thank you, Kai.